Hi, everyone, and welcome to Rough Rider, where every week I talk writing, self-publishing, and living in a barely literate society. Today, I'm going to be talking about book covers and specifically why your book cover matters and 4 ways you can go about getting your own great book cover. So we've all heard that famous English idiom since we were kids that you should not judge a book by its cover. I hate to be the cynic, but that is a load of crap. We are just visual creatures that judge things based on appearance, and this is just a biological fact. For most of us, between 80 and 85% of our perception is through our sense of sight. So we are hardwired to recognize things visually and assess them very quickly based on appearance alone. So that means if you see a book with a boring cover or one that's just not engaging at all, then you are not likely to be drawn to it. And the same is going to go for your potential readers. If they see a book that you put out, that you've self-published, that has a really bland or really generic cover or one that just doesn't catch their eye, then it's very unlikely that they are going to give that book a chance. The cover is the first thing a potential reader is going to see, and first impressions do matter. So if you want to make a good first impression on a potential reader, then I have 4 ways that you can go about getting a great book cover. Now, no matter what you choose to do to get a book cover, you will probably have to spend some money. Some self-publishing platforms like Amazon's KDP do have a free cover creator function, but I don't personally recommend them because I feel that the book covers that you can come out with those sorts of free cover designers tend to be just very generic and not very customizable and really won't set your book apart other than just giving you a cover if you don't have one. However, you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money to get a good book cover or an effective one. Really, you should go with what is best for your budget. So clearly this can go one of 2 ways. Either you are making the book cover yourself or you hire someone to make that cover for you. The option that you choose to go with all depends on your personal ability with graphic design, your budget that you've set aside for self-publishing your novel, and then really what just would work best for your book, because not every book is going to need a flashy cover and not every book is going to need a very elegant cover. It really depends on your project and what suits the tone of your novel and the message and all of that. So your first option that you have for getting a great book cover is to make it yourself using stock art or photos that you find online. So you can use any stock art or photography website like Shutterstock or iStock Photo, and then you can buy a commercial license so that way you have the rights to use that image royalty free as your book cover. There are plenty of fonts that are free for commercial use on sites like 1001 Fonts. And then what you can do is you can use a free photo editing or image editing software like Paint.net or Canva, or if it's in your budget or you already have access to it, you can use something more advanced like Photoshop or Illustrator. But you use a software like that has layer functionality, so that way you can add your book title and your name as the author onto this image that you've already picked from the stock art website. The most obvious limitation to picking this option is your personal ability with graphic design, and while it doesn't require a lot of experience or really anything super advanced, it is something that if you've never really manipulated a photo before or done anything like this, you might have a little bit of a learning curve. You also might not necessarily have an eye for the kind of balance that you need in a book cover for it to look good. So really, I would recommend that if you are going to do this and are going to try to do it yourself, look up some tutorials online. Just go on Google and look up, like just free lessons on how to make a book cover this way. It isn't particularly complicated to do it yourself if you're making an ebook cover, because it only requires just that first image and then the title and your author name. But if you are trying to make a cover for a print edition of your novel, then this is going to be a little more complicated, because then you have to worry about the front cover, the back cover, the spine, and making sure that everything is the right dimensions, and it becomes a lot more complicated when you're doing a print edition of your novel. However, an ebook version is pretty simple, so it's something that you very well could do on your own, even if you are teaching yourself how to use this kind of software and do this kind of photo editing. However, the major advantage to doing it yourself is that it is a low budget option. Really, the only thing that you'll be paying for is the commercial license to use the given stock art. So depending on what website you use and what the actual image is, you're probably looking somewhere between, I don't know, $50 to maybe $60. It really shouldn't break the bank because really you're just buying the rights to the image, and everything else that you're doing should be free if you're using free software like Canva or something like that. So your second option for getting yourself a great book cover for your indie novel is to network on social media. What you want to do is look for either freelance graphic designers or other indie authors on social media and see what you find. There will be a lot of freelance graphic designers displaying their work on social media, showing different projects that they've already worked on. Or what you could do is actually go through other indie authors and see if they have any referrals for you for graphic designers they've worked with in the past, or the kinds of people who've made the book covers for them. The advantage to going with this option is that there's always someone who's starting out in graphic design or looking to get new clients who really doesn't have a lot of experience yet, but is still very talented and maybe just wants to build up their portfolio. So they would potentially be willing to make a book cover for you at a much lower cost than a more professional graphic designer would, or someone who's more established. There's also always the chance that someone might be willing to do some work for free for you for mutual promotion. I'm not saying that you should go out there begging people to do stuff for you for free, but it is definitely possible that there might be someone who is willing to do that for you. Really just network and talk to new people, talk to other indie authors, and actually go to the graphic designers themselves and just see who's looking for, their next big break, someone who is looking for a chance to display their work and might be willing to do it at a lower cost or price than a professional would. Your third option for getting yourself a great book cover would be to use a freelance job site. So you can use a website like Fiverr or Upwork or Freelancer, and what you do is you list your project or your book and say that you need a book cover, and you set your price. And what happens is freelancers will bid on that project. So ultimately you choose which freelancer you're going to go with based on the portfolios that they show you and what price they're willing to work for. So the major advantage to going this route is that you really do set your own price. It may end up being a little more expensive because a lot of these people have been freelancing for a long time and have bigger portfolios and therefore can justify charging more money, but you're really letting people come to you. So it makes it a lot easier than having to actively search people out. And your fourth option for getting a great book cover as an indie author would be to use a professional design service. An example of a professional design service would be something like 99 Designs or bookdesigntemplates.com, both of which allow you to work with professional designers or a team of designers who will make a cover for your book. This tends to be the pricier option because of the fact that these are professional designers and it is a company with a team of designers a lot of the time. So for an ebook cover, you'd be looking at somewhere around $100, and for a print cover, like paperback or hardcover, it could be in the several hundreds. Using a professional design service is really a good option for people who already have a bigger budget. So for a lot of people starting out in self-publishing, this may not be the way to go unless somehow you come into a decent amount of money that you can burn, or you have a day job that pays very well. But no matter what option you decide to go with for getting your book cover, you do want to make sure that the cover that you end up going with for your indie novel is something that is engaging and will catch a reader's eye. The cover of your book is what tells a potential reader that your book is worth reading. So if your cover does not catch their attention or is boring or just looks cheap, it is not likely to draw someone in, and it's going to be a lot harder for you to find new readers who are willing to give your book a chance. You can't afford to cut corners on that kind of instant advertising because in the real world, we all judge books by their covers. If there are any cover design resources that you've used in the past that you'd like to share, then please put them in the comments below. And for a longer take on this topic, check out the full blog post on my website. I'll put the link in the description below. If you're a self-publishing author and you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and then follow me on social media. And thank you for watching. God bless.